Professor Zix-Nax nervously adjusted his tentacles as he surveyed the classroom. Today was the day he'd been dreading since the start of the semester, the day the exchange students from Earth would give their cultural presentation to his Galactic Sociology 101 class. He'd tried to prepare his regular students a mix of peaceful herbivores from garden worlds and silicon-based lifeforms from gas giants as best he could. But how do you truly prepare anyone for their first encounter with Deathworlders? As the two humans entered the room, an anxious hush fell over the class. The smaller one, a female if Zix-Nax recalled his xenobiology correctly, flashed what he hoped was a friendly smile rather than a display of aggression. Her larger companion, a male with impressive upper body musculature, nodded at the professor. "Thank you for having us," the female said. "I'm Sarah, and this is Mike. We're excited to share a bit about human culture with you all today." Zix-Nax's eye-stalk swiveled nervously. "Yes, welcome. Please begin your presentation whenever you're ready." Sarah stepped forward, her movements fluid and predatory in a way that made several students instinctively retreat into their protective shells. "So, what do you all know about humans?" she asked brightly. A tentative tendril rose from the back of the room. "You eat other animals," squeaked Gloop, a gelatinous being from a low-gravity swamp world. Sarah laughed, the sudden sound causing half the class to flinch. "That's right. Though Mike here is actually a vegetarian," the muscular human shrugged. "Gotta get those gains somehow. I just use plant protein." This statement was met with uncomprehending silence. "Right," Sarah continued, undeterred. "Well, one thing that's central to human culture is our drive to push ourselves beyond our limits, to go farther, faster, higher than anyone thought possible." She pulled up a holomage of a human running. "This is a marathon. It's a race where humans run 42.2 kilometers, that's about 26.2 miles without stopping." A chorus of horrified gasps filled the room. "But why?" asked the crystalline being, its facets dimming in distress. Mike grinned. "For fun, mostly." "Fun?" stammered Professor Zix-Nax. "You mean this is some kind of punishment?" Sarah shook her head. "Not at all. Humans do this voluntarily. In fact, people train for months or even years to compete in marathons." "That seems wildly unnecessary," observed a sentient fungal colony. "Surely there are more efficient modes of transportation." "Oh, absolutely," Mike agreed. "But that's not really the point. The point is to challenge yourself, to see what you're capable of." He flexed an impressive bicep, causing several students to cower behind their desks. "Same reason I lift weights. Gotta push those limits, you know." But why?" Gloop burbled, clearly struggling to comprehend. "What purpose does it serve?" Sarah and Mike exchanged a look, both fighting back laughter at the alien's bewilderment. "Well," Sarah began, her tone dripping with sarcasm, "you see, we humans have this strange notion that sometimes doing difficult things for no practical reason whatsoever can be rewarding." "Rewarding?" echoed a multi-limbed arachnoid. "You receive compensation for this self-inflicted suffering." Mike snorted. "Unless you count a participation medal and a banana at the finish line as compensation, then no. The reward is more internal." "Internal?" Professor Zix-Nax's tendrils twisted in confusion. "You mean these activities release some kind of narcotic substance in your bodies?" Sarah bit her lip, struggling to maintain a straight face. "Not exactly. Although there is something called a runner's high, it's more about the sense of accomplishment, the knowledge that you've overcome a significant challenge." "But why seek out challenge?" asked the fungal colony. "Is your world not challenging enough already?" "Oh, Earth is plenty challenging," Mike assured them. "But you see, that's kind of the point. We evolved on a death world, so we're hardwired to take on challenges. If we don't have any real ones, we make them up." He pulled up another holomage, this one showing a human clinging to the side of a sheer cliff face. "This is called free solo climbing. It's when a person climbs a massive rock wall with no ropes or safety equipment." The class erupted in a cacophony of alarmed clicks, whistles, and subsonic rumbles. But they could fall," screeched a avian being, feathers puffing out in distress. "Yep," Sarah confirmed cheerfully. "That's what makes it exciting." Exciting, the word was repeated in a dozen different languages, each version more incredulous than the last. "Humans find the possibility of death." "Exciting?" Professor Zix-Nax asked weakly, wondering if perhaps he should have heeded the warnings and not allowed this presentation after all. "Well, not all humans," Mike clarified. But yeah, some of us get a real thrill out of pushing right up to the edge of what's possible, and sometimes beyond. Beyond what's possible, the crystalline being's facets pulsed in confusion. That is a logical impossibility. Sarah grinned. Welcome to humanity, where we treat the impossible like a personal challenge. She brought up another image, this one of a sleek spacecraft. This is from the early days of our space program. We decided we wanted to send people to our moon, despite having no idea if it was actually possible. But why? Gloop burbled. What resources did your moon have that were so valuable? Mike and Sarah both burst out laughing at this, much to the alarm of their audience. Resources? Nah, there wasn't anything particularly valuable up there, Mike explained, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes. We just wanted to see if we could do it. You expended vast amounts of resources, time, and risked the lives of your people. Just to see if it could be done, Professor Zixnax's eye stalks drooped in bafflement. Pretty much, Sarah confirmed brightly. Oh, and because another group of humans said they'd do it first, and we couldn't let that happen. This statement was met with uncomprehending silence. You see, Mike explained, his tone caught between amusement and exasperation. Humans have this thing called competition. We like to see who can do things better or faster than others. But why? Asked the arachnoid. Surely cooperation is more beneficial to the species as a whole. Sarah nodded. Oh, we cooperate too. But we found that a little healthy competition can drive innovation and push us to achieve things we never thought possible. Like sending living beings to a barren rock orbiting your planet for no practical reason, the fungal colony inquired dryly. Exactly, Mike beamed, completely missing or choosing to ignore the sarcasm. And then we decided to go even further. We've sent probes to the edges of our solar system and beyond. He brought up an image of a tiny spacecraft against the backdrop of stars. This is Voyager 1. We launched it in 1977, and it's still going, currently about 14.5 billion miles from Earth. That seems highly impractical, observed the crystalline being. Surely there are more efficient ways to gather data about distant space. Sarah shrugged. Probably. But where's the fun in that? Fun, repeated Professor Zixnax faintly. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what we think it means. Mike grinned. Oh, trust me, Professor, human fun is probably beyond your wildest nightmares. This statement did nothing to reassure the increasingly anxious class. Let's talk about some other fun human activities, Sarah suggested, her eyes twinkling with barely suppressed mirth. She brought up an image of a human leaping from a high platform with some kind of fabric attached to their back. This is called skydiving. Are they falling? Gloop asked, its gelatinous form quivering in horror. Yep, Mike confirmed cheerfully. They jump out of a perfectly good aircraft, free fall for a while, then open a parachute to land safely. But why? The question came from multiple students simultaneously. Sarah's grin widened. For the adrenaline rush, of course. There's nothing quite like the feeling of plummeting towards the ground at terminal velocity. The class stared at her in horrified silence. Oh, come on, Mike cajoled. Don't tell me none of you have ever wanted to know what it feels like to fall from a great height. No, the response was unanimous and vehement. Mike mused. Guess it's a human thing. I should hope so, muttered Professor Zixnax, making a mental note to update the university's safety protocols regarding human exchange students. Sarah, seemingly oblivious to the class's distress, continued on. Of course, skydiving is just the beginning. Some humans like to take it even further with something called wingsuit flying. She brought up a video of a human in a strange, bat-like suit soaring between mountain peaks. The class watched in stunned silence as the human navigated through narrow gaps and skimmed perilously close to jagged rocks. As you can see, Sarah narrated, her voice filled with inappropriate enthusiasm. The wingsuit allows humans to achieve something very close to true flight. Of course, one wrong move, and she made a splat sound and gesture with her hands. Several students whimpered. Gloop oozed under its desk. But don't worry, Mike added quickly, misinterpreting the class's reaction as concern rather than abject horror. Wingsuit flyers train for years to perfect their skills. It's perfectly safe. You and I have very different definitions of safe, the arachnoid observed dryly. Sarah laughed. Oh, you have no idea. Wait until you hear about free diving. She brought up an image of a human descending into dark ocean depths. This is the sport of diving as deep as possible on a single breath of air. The current record is 214 meters, that's about 702 feet. But how do they not implode from the pressure, asked the crystalline being, its facets pulsing rapidly in distress. Oh, the human body is surprisingly resilient, Mike assured them, which somehow wasn't as comforting as he probably intended. Of course there are risks: shallow water blackout, nitrogen narcosis, decompression sickness. Why would anyone voluntarily subject themselves to such dangers? Professor Zixnax interrupted, his tendrils twisting anxiously. Sarah and Mike exchanged another amused glance. Well, Professor, Sarah began, her tone dripping with sarcasm, as we've been trying to explain, humans have this strange compulsion to test the limits of what's possible. We're not content with just accepting our limitations, we want to push past them to see what we're truly capable of. Even if what you're capable of is dying in increasingly elaborate and unnecessary ways, the fungal colony inquired acidly. Mike burst out laughing. Now you're getting it. Although, to be fair, we do try to minimize the actual dying part. It's more about coming as close to death as possible without actually crossing that line. This statement was met with a collective groan from the class. Oh, come on, Sarah cajoled. Surely some of you must understand the appeal of pushing your limits, of discovering what you're truly capable of. The class exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, the avian being spoke up hesitantly. I once ate a seed that was not yet fully ripe, it admitted. It was exhilarating. Sarah and Mike stared at the alien for a moment before bursting into laughter. Well, Mike managed between guffaws, I guess we all start somewhere. Perhaps Professor Zixnax interjected, desperately trying to regain control of the class, we could move on to some less perilous aspects of human culture. Sarah wiped tears of mirth from her eyes. Of course, Professor. Though I have to warn you, even our less perilous activities might seem a bit extreme to you all. She brought up an image of a human running with some kind of large feline predator in hot pursuit. This is from an event called Running of the Bulls in Pamplona, Spain. It's a festival where people voluntarily run in front of a group of angry, charging bulls. The class erupted in a cacophony of alarmed sounds. But why? Gloop burbled from beneath its desk. Why would you run towards danger instead of away from it? Mike shrugged. For the thrill, I guess. And bragging rights. It's considered pretty badass to participate in the running of the bulls. Badass, repeated the crystalline being, its facets dim with confusion. It means cool, impressive, Sarah explained. In human culture, there's often a lot of social prestige associated with doing dangerous or difficult things. So you risk your lives. For social status, the arachnoid clarified, its tone somewhere between horrified and grudgingly impressed. Well, when you put it like that, it does sound a bit silly, Mike admitted. But it's more than that. It's about facing your fears, pushing your limits, experiencing life to the fullest. By running from angry bovines, Professor Zixnax's eye stalks swiveled in bewilderment. Sarah laughed. Well, that's just one example. Humans find all sorts of ways to challenge themselves. Some climb mountains, others dive to the bottom of the ocean. Some push their bodies to the limit in ultramarathons or triathlons. She brought up a series of images showing humans engaged in various extreme sports and endurance events. The class watched in stunned silence as they saw people surfing enormous waves, skiing down near vertical mountain slopes, and competing in punishing obstacle courses. But why? The question came from multiple students at once, their tones ranging from horrified to fascinated. Mike grinned. You know, that's a question we humans ask ourselves sometimes too, but I think deep down, it's because we're not satisfied with just existing. We want to know what we're capable of, to test the limits of our potential. It's like, Sarah added, her eyes shining with enthusiasm, we've got this fire inside us, this drive to explore, to push boundaries, to go beyond what anyone thought was possible. And when we do that, when we achieve something we didn't think we could, well, there's no feeling like it in the universe. The class was silent for a moment, trying to process this. Finally, the fungal colony spoke up. It seems inefficient, it observed. Surely your species would progress faster if you focused your energies on practical pursuits rather than these dangerous pastimes. Sarah and Mike exchanged a knowing look. You'd think so, wouldn't you? Sarah said. But here's the thing, a lot of our greatest achievements as a species have come from this same drive to push boundaries and do the impossible. She brought up a series of images: the first powered flight, the moon landing, great works of art and architecture. All of these came from humans looking at the limits of what was possible and saying, nah, I bet we can go further. It's not always about the practical benefits, Mike added. Sometimes it's just about the joy of discovery, the thrill of achievement. But those seemingly pointless pursuits often lead to innovations that benefit everyone. He gestured to the image of the Apollo moon landing. The space race gave us satellite technology, advanced our understanding of physics and materials science, and led to countless innovations we use every day. So you're saying, Professor Zixnax ventured hesitantly, that these dangerous and seemingly pointless activities actually drive your species' progress? Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. It's all interconnected. The same drive that makes some humans want to climb mountains or dive to crushing depths is what pushes others to make scientific breakthroughs or create incredible works of art. It's about always asking what if, Mike explained. What if we could go faster? Higher? Further? What if we could cure this disease, build this impossible structure, create this groundbreaking technology? The class was silent, processing this information. Even Professor Zixnax seemed lost in thought, his tentacles twisting in contemplation. But the avian being chirped hesitantly. Doesn't this drive for constant challenge and achievement lead to dissatisfaction? Are humans ever content? Sarah and Mike exchanged a glance, their amusement tinged with a hint of wistfulness. Now that, Mike said, is a philosophical question humans have been grappling with for millennia. It's true, Sarah admitted, that this drive can sometimes lead to restlessness. There's always another mountain to climb, another record to break. But I think most humans would say that it's the journey, the striving, that brings fulfillment. Besides, Mike added with a grin, we're pretty good at celebrating our achievements along the way, which brings us to another important aspect of human culture parties. He brought up an image of a crowded stadium, filled with cheering humans. This is what happens after a major sporting event. Win or lose, humans gather to celebrate the effort, the spectacle, the sheer joy of competition. As you celebrate. Losing the crystalline being's facets pulsed in confusion. Sarah laughed. Sometimes, yeah, because for us, it's not always about the end result. It's about the attempt, the willingness to put yourself out there and give it your all. That seems illogical, the fungal colony observed. Oh, humans are nothing if not illogical, Mike agreed cheerfully. But that's part of what makes us who we are. We're not content with just accepting things as they are. We always want to know what's over the next hill, what's possible if we just push a little harder. He brought up a new image, this one of a human in a strange suit standing on a red, dusty landscape. This is an artist's conception of the first human on Mars. It hasn't happened yet, but we're working on it. But, why, Gloop burbled, having cautiously re-emerged from under its desk. Your own world is not yet fully explored or understood. Why expend resources to visit another? Sarah's eyes gleamed with excitement. Because it's there. Because it's a challenge. Because every time we've pushed beyond what we thought were our limits, we've learned something new about ourselves and the universe. And Mike added with a mischievous grin, because someone said it couldn't be done. There's nothing humans love more than proving the impossible possible. The class exchanged bewildered glances. Professor Zixnax's eye stalks drooped in resignation. I begin to understand, he said slowly, why humans are classified as a Class 5 existential threat to galactic peace. Sarah and Mike burst out laughing. Oh, come on, Sarah protested between giggles. We're not that bad. Yeah, Mike agreed. We're just a bunch of crazy apes on a deadly mudball, trying to figure out what we're capable of. That the arachnoid observed dryly is precisely what concerns us. Sarah's grin widened. Oh, you guys are worried about us. That's sweet. But don't worry, for all our Deathworld craziness, we're also pretty good at taking care of each other. She brought up a new series of images, humans forming human chains to rescue others from floodwaters, firefighters rushing into burning buildings, doctors working tirelessly in emergency rooms. See, she explained, that same drive that makes us do crazy things for the thrill of it also makes us push ourselves to help others. We're not satisfied with just looking out for ourselves, we want to make things better for everyone. Yeah, Mike chimed in. For every human doing something insanely dangerous for the fun of it, there's another one pushing the boundaries of medicine, or technology, or social progress. The class seemed to relax slightly at this, though Professor Zixnax still looked skeptical. So you're saying, he ventured, that this obsession with pushing limits can be channeled into positive pursuits. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. In fact, some of our greatest achievements as a species have come from redirecting that energy into solving problems or helping others. She brought up an image of a human in a wheelchair competing in what appeared to be some kind of race. This is the Paralympics. It's an athletic competition for humans with physical disabilities. These athletes push the boundaries of what's possible every day, inspiring others and driving innovations in medical technology and accessibility. Fascinating, murmured the crystalline being, its facets pulsing with interest. So even when faced with physical limitations, humans seek to transcend them. Especially then, Mike confirmed. There's nothing humans love more than being told something's impossible. It just makes us more determined to find a way. He brought up a new image, this one of a human with prosthetic legs sprinting on a track. This is an example of how our drive to push limits can lead to amazing technological advancements. These prosthetics allow people who've lost limbs to not just walk again, but to run, compete, even break athletic records. The class watched in awed silence as Mike played a video of the prosthetic-wearing athlete sprinting at incredible speed. But that's not possible, Gloop burbled in confusion. How can an artificial limb perform better than a biological one? Sarah grinned. And that, my friend, is exactly the kind of question that drives human innovation. Someone looked at the limitations of the human body and thought, how can we do better? It's not just about physical achievements either, Mike added. He brought up a series of images showing complex mathematical equations, scientific diagrams, and intricate artwork. We apply that same drive to push boundaries in every field: science, mathematics, art, philosophy. We're always asking, what's next? What's possible? How can we go further? The class was silent for a moment, processing this information. Finally, the avian being spoke up. It seems exhausting, it chirped hesitantly. Do humans ever rest? Sarah and Mike burst out laughing. Oh, we rest, Sarah assured them, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. In fact, some humans have turned relaxation into an extreme sport of its own. She brought up an image of a human lounging in a hammock on a beautiful beach. This is what we call a vacation. Some humans spend all year working hard just so they can spend a week or two doing absolutely nothing. But that seems contradictory to everything you've told us, Professor Zixnax protested, his tentacles twisting in confusion. Mike grinned. Welcome to the wonderful world of human contradictions, Professor. We contain multitudes. You see, Sarah explained, humans are complex. We're driven to achieve, to push boundaries, to test our limits. But we're also capable of appreciating stillness, of finding joy in simple pleasures. She brought up a new series of images, humans sharing meals with friends and family, reading books in cozy nooks, tending to gardens, meditating in serene natural settings. These moments of peace and connection are just as important to us as our grand adventures and achievements, she continued. They're what give us the strength and perspective to keep pushing forward. Yeah, Mike added. It's all about balance. We push ourselves hard, but we also know how to kick back and enjoy life. It's part of what makes us human. The class seemed to relax a bit at this, some of the tension easing out of the room. So the fungal colony ventured. Humans are not constantly engaged in death-defying activities. Sarah laughed. No, not constantly. Though I'll admit, even our relaxing activities can sometimes get a bit extreme by your standards. She brought up an image of humans engaging in what appeared to be a massive, chaotic water gun fight. This is from a festival in Thailand called Songkran. It started as a respectful water blessing ceremony and has evolved into a nationwide water fight. The class watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as humans of all ages gleefully doused each other with water, using everything from small pistols to enormous water cannons. But why? Gloop burbled, its gelatinous form quivering in confusion. Mike shrugged, grinning widely. Because it's fun, and because it's a great way to cool off during the hottest time of the year. You see, Sarah explained, humans have this amazing ability to turn almost anything into a celebration, a challenge, or preferably both. We take simple ideas and push them to their limits, just to see what happens. She brought up a series of images showing various unusual human festivals and competitions, people racing down a hill chasing a wheel of cheese, masses of humans engaged in enormous tomato fights, people building impossibly tall human towers. These might seem bizarre or pointless to you, she continued, But for us, they're ways of bringing communities together, of creating shared experiences, of finding joy and excitement in everyday life. And Mike added with a wink, they're great ways to test our skills, push our limits, and maybe set a weird world record or two. The class stared at the images in stunned silence, trying to process the sheer variety and apparent insanity of human recreational activities. I think I'm beginning to understand, Professor Zixnax said slowly, his eye stalks swiveling as he studied the images. Humans don't just push their physical limits, you push the boundaries of everything, constantly. Sarah beamed at him. Exactly. Now you're getting it, Professor. For humans, life isn't about staying within predefined limits. It's about constantly redefining what's possible. Whether that's in sports, science, art, or even just how we have fun, Mike added. We're always looking for new challenges, new experiences, new ways to surprise ourselves and each other. The class was quiet for a moment, each being lost in their own thoughts. Finally, the crystalline being spoke up, its facets pulsing with what might have been excitement. I must admit, it chimed. While your species' proclivities are alarming, they are also intriguing. Perhaps there is something to be learned from this approach to existence. Sarah and Mike exchanged a delighted glance. Now that, Mike said, is music to our ears. Because if there's one thing humans love more than pushing our own limits, it's encouraging others to push theirs. Sarah finished with a grin. So, who's up for a little adventure? We've got some beginner-level skydiving equipment in our ship, and I bet we could rig up a bungee jump from the astronomy tower. The horrified screams of the class drowned out the rest of her words, but Sarah and Mike just laughed, their eyes twinkling with mischief and the irrepressible human spirit of adventure. As the chaos unfolded, Professor Zixnax slumped in his hover chair, all four of his eye stalks drooping in resignation. He made a mental note to update the university's insurance policies, install some additional safety equipment, and perhaps invest in a good stiff drink. Dealing with human exchange students, he realized, was going to push him to his limits in ways he'd never imagined. But as he watched Sarah and Mike enthusiastically explaining the thrills of freefall to a terrified but oddly fascinated group of students, he felt something unexpected stir within him. A tiny spark of curiosity, a whisper of what if. And in that moment, Professor Zixnax understood the true danger and the irresistible allure of humanity. For in their relentless pursuit of the impossible, they had a habit of making others believe in the possible. And in a galaxy of limitations and careful planning, that made them the most unpredictable and transformative force imaginable. With a sigh that was equal parts trepidation and anticipation, Professor Zixnax realized that his comfortable, predictable life was about to get a whole lot more interesting. And deep down, in a place he'd never admit to, he was almost looking forward to it. After all, he mused as he watched a group of his students cautiously poking at a human safety harness. If you can't beat them, maybe it's time to join them. Just as soon as he figured out how to explain bungee jumping to the university board without causing a mass panic. The future, it seemed, was going to be anything but boring. And really, isn't that what being human or friends with humans was all about?